Look, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but just hear me out. Hey gang, what's going on? And welcome on back to Football Therapy with me, your host Jan. As always, I do hope you're doing well. I really do hope that, and welcome back to Chelsea News, which is of course the daily content here on the channel where I reflect on what's being said about Chelsea, giving you my thoughts on it, but as always, more importantly, asking for yours. There's a lot of stuff I want to speak about today. There is a thought experiment, an Toney thought experiment. I had spoken about it in recent weeks, but a couple of you in the YouTube comments and indeed on Instagram have referenced perhaps a 6 months loan for Toney, who, by the way, yes, I recognise is in the headlines today for all the wrong reasons. A couple of Manchester United youngsters, or once of Man United, Alejandro Garnacho has spoken about his decision to leave Manchester United, making headlines, having no regrets. Nicky Butt speaking to Paul Scholes on a podcast about Kobbie Mainoo having to push himself out of Man United and how Chelsea should come in for him, or if they do come in for him again, and if they were advising Kobbie, they would tell him to go. A deep breath, Yannick, there's more. Giovanni Kender's got an injury that will see him 2 months out. Some really poor but highlighting and illuminating statistics with Joao Pedro, stuff that I've been speaking about, but you see it in numbers. And the two transfer sources that I will never source, seriously, have just made me laugh because they're just speaking absolute nonsense about Estevao, which is funny, and I'm going to bring it to you ironically. So, strap yourselves in, friends. Get comfortable, as always. Thank you for supporting the content here on Football Therapy. It's most appreciated. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast app, please do follow and 5-star. Share it with everyone you know. Spread the love around of Football Therapy. Thank you for your continued support, and let's get into it. Starting off with this post on X from Transfer News Live, which has over 3 million followers on X. It's considered the biggest transfer page on social media or whatever. As you can see, they're sourcing for Jahez, the headline maker that should not be named, the absolute nonsense creator. Manchester City are preparing to make Estevao their most expensive ever signing, with an offer of £105 million on the table. City would also be willing to double his wages. Yeah, well, that wouldn't be hard at Chelsea. Believing him to be the most exciting young player on the planet. Chelsea are strongly against this sale. Right, now, this is, of course, male cow testicles. That is absolutely a load of nonsense. And the funny thing about this is, for Jahez, I don't know how this headline, this newspaper, this source keeps getting referenced by actually a lot of, I say reputable aggregators, not reputable aggregators, but news websites. Reports from Spain. There are 2 news sources on social media that I see circulating all over the gaff that come up with nonsense. It's that for Jahez, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. I think so, with the J going, and IndyCar News, which is very funny because IndyCar News is in the replies to this post on X saying, we can confirm this is fake news, which of course there's been lots of comedic replies about these 2 terrible sources interacting with each other. Of course, it's just a news page aggregating it. But of course, there is not a chance in the burning depths of hell Chelsea sell Estevao to anyone at the moment, let alone Manchester City, and of course Manchester City are not going to sign him. There's just no way. There's no way they won't, so I just wanted to reference it because, you know, it's got, over 1/3 of a billion impressions, and I speak about Chelsea news, I react to the headlines, this is a headline, but I will put the farm on telling you this is the most load of nonsense you will ever read. So, let's move on and speak about this Joao Pedro stat. Courtesy at the Blue Dodger, and this is from Dom Smith. Joao Pedro has averaged just 1.75 shots per game, and this is the among the lowest for any strikers starting regularly in the Premier League this season. Last term, Nico Jackson was averaging 3.08, which is best part of double by way of comparison. Now, this is precisely what I've been saying here on Football Therapy for weeks and weeks and weeks. Joao Pedro's problem is he just has a really low shot volume. At first, I thought it was because we were playing him as a centre forward, and he basically does better playing off a centre forward. Maybe he's back to goal less, and therefore perhaps more shooting opportunities. You know, his body's facing the goal, he can open up, he can run into spaces for what he deems higher shot value. But the guy simply doesn't swing his boot towards the football to try and score a goal. It's just not happening. And, look, maybe he's a bit of a different, style player. Of course, the comparisons have been previously made of Roberto Firmino in that sort of amazing Liverpool team that was a facilitator of, the quintessential false nine, a facilitator for talented wingers, of which Chelsea have many. Talented wingers. But he's not even doing that. I do like Joao Pedro. I do maybe feel like I've been, getting on his case quite a lot recently. But it's because I'm just disappointed with the performances and the work rate. Look, I did preview the Atalanta game, which of course kicks off tonight, yesterday. So go check out that video if you're yet to do so, or podcast. But to be honest, man, I am not. I've started him in that game, shall I say? But I'm not massively pleased. And it doesn't surprise me at all that he's taking so little shots per game. Obviously, partially up to Enzo Maresca, but, him as well. Go and shoot on goal. I'm a massive, proponent for shot volume. Just take shots. Provided you're not constantly skying them, if you've got anything about you, you will score some goals. Of course, later in the video, I'm going to speak about Ivan Toney, so keep your powder dry for that, gang. And let's move on and speak about Giovanni Kenda. So this is disappointing news. The young sporting winger, the 18-year-old Chelsea-bound attacker, has got a serious injury. He will be out for 2 months, which was a shame. He was supposed to play tonight against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. Of course, he's been scoring and assisting in the Champions League. High-profile games, despite only being an 18-year-old winger. Kind of Estevao vibes, and of course, he arrives at Chelsea in the summer. Another reason why perhaps, your Garnachos, who we'll talk about in a moment, your Gittenses, they all feel like they need to sort of step their game up because they know this kid's coming and he's scoring in the Champions League and assisting in the Champions League, and he's younger than both of them. He's pretty much, he's Estevao's age, so we've got this other teenage sensation coming, although it's only 2 months out, so, he should be well healed by the time he arrives to Chelsea. It's disappointing because he's in a really, really bright sort of developmental spot in his career where Chelsea can watch him from afar, indeed Chelsea fans as well, and he can be even more ready when he arrives in the summer and, maybe play in the Chelsea first team and not get farmed out to Strasbourg, because although the French league is a higher level than the Portuguese league, not by too much, you'd have to say, wouldn't you? It's technically a top 5 league, but if you had to choose the 6th highest league, it's probably, I'd say, the Portuguese league, Liga NOS, just above the Championship. And then maybe the Eredivisie or something. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. But if you had to rank it, let's just quickly have a bit of fun here. I'll rank them. I'd say the Premier League's first, probably still La Liga second, and then Serie A. I mean, is it Bundesliga or Serie A third? Because we get a lot of Italian teams doing well and reaching, European finals. So I'm going to say Serie A third, and then the Bundesliga fourth, because we've seen all these Bundesliga players flop in the Prem recently. I know Bayer Leverkusen were good, and, but Dortmund's not been like a powerhouse for ages, and, even Bayern didn't win the league recently. So I'd say the Bundesliga 4th, Ligue 1 5th, and then, Portuguese 6th, Championship I do think's high enough to be 7th, and then you've got, the Eredivisie and then the Belgium League and stuff like that. There you go, that was a bit of fun. Let's move on and speak about Alejandro Garnacho. So Garna, as they affectionately call him at Chelsea, spoke to the media ahead of the Atalanta game, and when he was asked if he had any regrets over his United departure, Garnacho simply said no, and asked whether he was sad how it ended. As a follow-up, he just went, no. This is an article by Kieran Gill, who goes on to write, on choosing to join Chelsea after United, he said, look, I came here to play my football, to show the people the player I am. Sometimes in life, you have to change things to maybe take a step forward or to improve as a player. It was the right moment, and it was also the right club. It was an easy decision. The most important thing is confidence. Enzo Maresca speaks to me every week. We are going to get better. me as a player and the team together with time. We started this season 3 months ago, so it's about building confidence. Yeah, Chelsea fans are like warming to Alejandro Garnacho. The Chelsea faithful in the stands have been singing his name, his chant. I don't know the actual lyrics to the Chelsea adaptation, which I'd be interested to see, the Viva Garnacho. But yeah, I hope he does really well for Chelsea. I mean, look, much like Jadon Sancho, yeah, who came to Chelsea and was a really good citizen, trained really well. I was really pleased the other day to see him have a couple of exciting contributions against Arsenal for Aston Villa off the bench. He did a really good key pass, and then he did a really good dribble just before the winning goal. So I was really pleased for Jadon. But he left that Man United drama. More on that in the moment with Kobbie Mainoo. And Sancho came to Chelsea, played well to the point where we actually tried to sign him. We just couldn't agree on a wage packet. Of course, he's on absolutely incredible wages at Manchester United. Wages that Chelsea simply are not prepared to pay anyone at the moment. Maybe a 6-month loan for Ivan Toney. Keep your powder dry. I'll speak about that in a moment. But yeah, Garnacho similarly the same. Came to Chelsea, 40 million quid, probably a deal that suits everyone, considering he was a one-to-way and Amorim was like, you're done here. Chelsea fans were originally saying, ooh, well, if we get him for 20, 25 million, it's a steal. We ended up paying 40 million, but there's still people at Manchester United and people in the footballing trade industry that say this kid, should be a £70 million player sooner rather than later, so Chelsea got a great deal. I think context is key. Everyone's sort of happy in the end. But yeah, seemingly much like, Sancho, maybe even Rashford at Barcelona, he just needed to be out of Manchester United to apply himself, to show that he can train well. And apparently Chelsea are very, very pleased with his application, with his training, with his attitude, and he's got a good relationship with Enzo Maresca. Though, of course, Garnacho is fluent in English because he joined the Manchester United Academy from Atletico Madrid, I believe. He's got a pretty strong command of English, but because Maresca's such a fluent Spanish speaker, I imagine they have their sort of tactical discussions and all their general conversations in Spanish, so he really can relay to the young Argentine player what he wants. And I'm really rooting for Garnacho. He's so young still. The thing is, because he's been around for ages, it feels like it's just this name that we're so used to, and because we've seen him a lot, maybe it doesn't feel like he's going to become this great player. But he's 21 years old. He's just got a wealth of experience. He's 21 years old who's joined a new club. Do you know what I mean? So he needs to settle in. He needs to understand entirely how to get better, and provided there's no, soap opera drama at Chelsea like Manchester United, which, you do very well to get Man United levels of drama, although sometimes Chelsea do try, but I guess that's out of the dressing room of late, so hopefully we'll keep it like that. Yeah, and, of course this has caused a lot of drama on social media, the fight between Man United and Chelsea fans again, but of course he's going to say he has no regrets. He's not going to be like, yeah, I do regret it. I wish I was back at Man United. I mean, I suppose you could say he would have done like a neutral, like, I'm not thinking about that, I'm just thinking about my current club and moving forward in my career. He could have been really political and spokesman-y, but he sort of just went nope and smiled and laughed. So that's what's created the conversation. Now, I want to speak about this Kobbie Mainoo situation as well, because this has caused a stir on social media because of a podcast. That's right, Nicky Butt and Paul Scholes aren't very happy at the moment with Manchester United. And of course, a huge talking point is Kobbie Mainoo. He's not been used constantly by Amorim, and the Man United fans are dying for him to be used. Nicky Butt said the following: Kobbie Mainoo is a top player, but we are effing up. You can imagine what that word is. For his football career, he has to leave United. He's lost 18 months of development. I hope he goes abroad, because it's embarrassing if he goes to Chelsea, which could happen. They might go and get him because they're putting together a very good young squad of players, and they keep buying young players. They go on, Paul Scholes says something like, if I was an advisor, I'd tell him, go to Chelsea, which is pretty funny because, you could make an argument that Chelsea have too many young players, and certainly in that position, we've sort of got a log jam, but they're sort of saying they play young players, they trust young players, look at them. They're both very, very unhappy with the treatment of Kobbie Mainoo at Man United. It's interesting to hear Nicky Butt say that, but Paul Scholes is always banging on about it. Now, this is interesting. I mean, this is a story story because, of course, they've referenced Chelsea, but I'm talking about it because we've looked at Kobbie Mainoo before seriously. Like The Athletic reported when we were looking at Garnacho, we were also looking at Kobbie Mainoo. It doesn't stop there, of course. He's got a really good relationship and a strong sort of bond with Chelsea superstar Cole Palmer. You know, they're always chatting on England duty. They became really close friends. And, you know, Cole Palmer was posting on Kobbie's social media, "Free my boy." Do you know what I mean? So suddenly it became, oh, here we ready go. So we know Chelsea have interested and made inquiries. We know Cole Palmer loves him and wants him to play football. And then you got Man United legends talking about how he's got to leave Man United. And if they were his advisors, they'd tell him to go to Chelsea. And there cometh your headlines, ladies and gentlemen. Now, look, he's an amazing young player. He started a European final for England. Like, firstly, as a kid, as he's in a terrible situation. Yeah, his career is, but he's not going to go to the World Cup. Yeah, so he wanted to leave Man United in the summer. They didn't let him because he started the last final for England, and England are about to go to a World Cup with a very exciting team with Harry Kane probably in the final, you know, tournament at the peak of his power as captain of England with, like, you know, your Jude Bellinghams, your Foden finding form again, Cole Palmer's, and, you know, Reece James is fully fit. And actually, it's a pretty exciting time to be an England fan. He started the last European final. He will think, even if I'm not starting in that team, I should be part of the, you know, the squad and be involved with the experience. And at the moment, he's getting nowhere near it because of how Man United have sort of exiled him and not utilising him. And when I say Man United, I'm thinking Ruben Amorim, the manager. You know, Mason Mount's got more of a chance of getting called up for England at the moment. And, you know, he scored yesterday and he's looking pretty good. And we know the Chelsea manager, the England manager loves Mason Mount. So if he sees Mason Mount playing every week and scoring goals, he might think, even though, again, there's a logjam in that, you know, England position as an attacking midfielder, he might think, I could do a lot worse than bringing Mason Mount into the England team. So Kobbie will be really down on it. And look, I don't think we should sign Kobbie Mainoo because we've got loads of players in that position. We've actually got academy players as well that you could talk about that also are, you know, like Reggie Walsh. We know he's a sort of similar diminutive midfielder that can play in a similar role that Maresca loves. He speaks glowingly when he speaks about Reggie Walsh. He's signed a pro contract now, I believe, and he's 17. He's only 17, so he's so young, and he's very petite physically still, so he needs time to develop and grow up a bit in terms of physical, you know, stature. Speaking, by the way, of pro contracts, Thiago Silva's son signed a pro contract with Chelsea, which is just lovely scenes. Hopefully we'll see him make it over time. We'll see, though. Yeah, so look, it will be funny, Kobbie Mainoo, because it will be another market opportunity, taking Man United's talent away from them. But it would feel like we're doing it just for the sake of doing it, rather than actually needing it to solve a problem in the team, you know? Which brings me on to the final talking point of today's video, and that is a striker. I did want to speak about Ivan Toney, and I was planning this yesterday, but of course you may have seen this in the headlines today. Ivan Toney arrested over alleged headbutt during night out. Ivan Toney was arrested in the early hours of Saturday morning, allegedly headbutting a person in a London bar. Now, Ivan Toney is a bit problematic, yeah, so let's address that before anything else. He got banned for, you know, gambling for a long time. We know he's got a bit of an ego. We thought he was going to go to Arsenal for a long time. He definitely was a really, like, a lot of teams wanted Ivan Toney because he was scoring a lot of goals for Brentford. He was getting called up for England. And he was destined for a Champions League club until he just went, you know what, I'll take the Saudi bag, and went to Al Ahly. Where does he go? Where does he play? He plays for Al Ahly, I think. And yes, so he's been arrested. Look, it will be some sort of final suspended sentence, I don't know. And it's not good look. But I needed to sort of address the elephant in the room before I speak about my thought experiment. Look, it really does follow up of what I said yesterday about the strikers, about that Joao Pedro stat earlier. There is a marriage of convenience here, okay? Now, Emmanuel Omega arrives in the summer. He's a striker Chelsea are very excited about. He's 23. He's looking like he's getting better and better. He's really big and he's good at scoring goals. Great. In the summer, Delap will be fit again. You know, we'll have a new striker in Omega. We might be fine. But in the meantime, we're short. Gu's great. as a sort of rotational option, but he's a teenager that, has never really scored lots of senior goals. I think he's got a very small amount of senior goals to his career spread across low-level competitions broadly. So that isn't the answer to start at number 9 for Chelsea Football Club, if you ask me. I know we can find innovative options and solutions and your false nines and your Pedro Netos and who knows, maybe even like, a Cole Palmer, a tip of the diamond, like, Bellingham did so well in his first season at Real Madrid. But ultimately, it's a problem. Now, I'm annoyed this Ivan Toney arrest story's come up because I was going to make a really strong pitch for a 6 months loan. I mean, maybe it could still happen, but Chelsea probably wouldn't want the negative headlines. Because speaking of the World Cup and not getting called up, Ivan Toney has been called up to Thomas Tuchel's England squad as a Saudi Pro League player, but he's not since, and he won't again. I think Tuchel wanted to look at him because he likes him. Thomas Tuchel likes Ivan Toney. He obviously loves Harry Kane. He's captain of England, England's top goal scorer. He worked really hard, Tuchel, to sign Harry Kane for Bayern Munich from Spurs. He made that happen. He pushed it. He's spoken about it clearly in press conferences. So he loves Kane. But the drop-off to Kane is big. You think Ollie Watkins, meh, on and off form, Dom Solanke, injury, Delap, I think is the long-term heir apparent to Harry Kane, but he's going to need a massive long stint of games and consistency and scoring and, all this kind of stuff, which seems a while off yet. But Ivan Toney, I think, Tuchel would have loved the excuse to call up Ivan Toney as his second choice centre forward behind Harry Kane. But he hasn't got the ability to do that because even up Saudi, Toney wants to be part of the England setup. He did actually quite well when he went to the last tournament. I think he scored an important goal and looked quite good and put himself about. Now, there is a world, probably if he doesn't go headbutting people in London nightclubs, there is a world where Ivan Toney goes, you know what? I'm how old is he? He's 30. He's not old, is he? He's like, he will tell you still. He's 29, bro. He's 29. He doesn't turn 30 until the end of the season, basically. Still in his 20s, an elite striker. And by the way, it's the Saudi Pro League. It's a farmers league. 100,000%. I think it's funny, Cristiano Ronaldo going over there tallying goals for, stat padding. It's the same with Messi and MLS. I'm not, being anti-Ronaldo. They're both farmers leagues, yeah? So there you go. Cards on the table. But he scored loads of goals out there, Ivan Toney. I think, was he the top scorer last campaign? I think he scored 5 goals already this season. Whatever, I don't know. He scores loads of goals out there. But the truth is, Ivan Toney, a 6-month loan at Chelsea, he moonwalks into our starting lineup, and apparently he wanted to come back to the Prem. He was desperate, and I think it's because he wants to play for a little bit so he can get Tuchel's go, right, come on then, come to America in the summer. If Ivan Toney comes to Chelsea for a 6 months loan to play top-end Premier League football, to play in the Champions League for, lest we forget, the Club World Cup champions who can beat Paris Saint-Germain 3-0 in a final. For this team, if he's the starter, and no disrespect to Mark Yu, but Ivan Toney, right now, it's even a fit to that. Ivan Toney starts over him and says, right, just go score the goals. If Palmer's not on the pitch, you take penalties because he's got an amazing penalty record. Go to war with these Chelsea teams. Raw with Reece James and Enzo Fernandez. Score the goals, be a big boy, and just score the goals. The senior striker, it would have been perfect. Chelsea, maybe apparently Clear Lake Capital have got this relationship with, the PIF, who of course own the Saudi Pro League. Maybe they could have found a way to be like, yeah, we'll just pay his wages, no loan fee, yada, yada, yada. We'll get a play. We'll do our best to get Raheem Sterling to you at some point. Maybe something could have been done and we could have got a 6-month loan where we just pay his wages. But to be honest, maybe because it's not a permanent transfer, they'd be more inclined to pay a higher wages because it's just a loan. And just say, look, to everyone in the squad, this guy's just here for a few months. We're not giving him 300k a week forever. He's here for a few months to help you guys get over the line, qualify for Champions League. Let's try and win the Champions League. Why not? I think he's that kind of difference maker. Yeah, we could save him. That's not a new story. That's a thought experiment, but I think it's absolutely so. Look, I've done videos about the dreams about signing Harry Kane, but I just, it's a pipe dream, isn't it? But I think something like this should be on the table, personally. But what do you think, guys? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'll be very glad to have your thoughts. Thank you for your continued support on YouTube, for liking and subscribing, for podcast platforms following and 5-starring. And I do hope to see you all back here soon. Take care of yourselves.
You ain't so tough with that bad boy tuck. I'ma get it how I'm living, I'ma walk the walk. Outline my lines, I rap through thought. Body bag the verse, outlined in chalk. In my life seen trouble, hustle on the double. Silence on the trigger like my pick got a muzzle. Yo, chick like to guzzle, bad boy stay in trouble. I only love this paper, sorry I don't. I laugh me, baby.